Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Green Havoc, and this is the Open Division brought to you by Broadcast.gg. And we have a insanely exciting game. Two teams that are 4-1 with incredibly similar map differentials, but a 500 SR difference. We have Polar Ace versus Feeders with Benefits. Before we get into breaking down these teams with my analysts Lofty and Frito, if you're new to the Open Division, the way it works is it is a Swiss system, which means teams will play 10 games over the course of 5 weeks, being reseeded at the end of each weekend. That way, they're always playing teams with a similar game record and map differential. At the end of the 5 weeks, the teams with the top scores will move on to the next round. But for now, we have this game, again, with Polar Ace and Feeders with Benefits. So, Frito, I'm going to toss this first question over to you, and because you got to watch Feeders with Benefits in the past, so I have to ask, what is the big thing you're looking to see out of this team today?
Well, their first game on stream that I saw was actually a loss for them, but showing a lot of team play focus, actually, but a little bit of reluctance for the big play moments, really stepping up to the plate to take risks or to go aggressive in certain spots. And that's what I'd like to see Feeders with Benefits, which is, by the way, probably one of the best team names I've ever heard. Very punny. I approve. I'm a fan already.
All right, and so Lofty, we have over here on Polar Ace, a team that is definitely in the SR advantage. What's something we're looking for from their play?
Well, I mean, like you said, this is sort of going to be another underdog story where we have a team that's coming in with a pretty significant SR advantage. However, that being said, them as a team have only been together for maybe a month tops, according to their player sheet. And so Feeders with Benefits having the edge in that regard, being together for almost 4 months. We're going to have to see if that synergy can sort of trump mechanical skill today as Polar Ace take them on in our series of maps and games today.
So, speaking of Polar Ace, we have Wild Wingbat, their captain, who plays the same heroes, the Genji, the Pharah, the Hanzo, the projectile heroes, as Tydra, who is Feeders with Benefits captain. And we saw Tydra absolutely just wreck face in the game that we got to watch him on. Even though they lost, he was an MVP candidate until the very end. So that's going to be quite a duel. Are you excited for that, Frito? And what is going to be that make or break moment, do you think, in that matchup?
Right, exactly. I think especially on the Pharah, I feel Tydra is very strong, but also flexing over to the Brigitte. He doesn't have it listed on his sheet, but I know he's hot in that Brigitte pick, and he could whip that out in order to really turn the tides. Also, I'm always going to be searching for any team to give me any hint of Wrecking Ball play. Gummy Bear does have it listed as his third hero, so I hope that we get to see a little bit more of the fun hamster today as well. But Gummy Bear, 16-year-old player, and has shown really consistent play throughout the games that I've seen him play thus far. So really looking forward to seeing him progress as that off-tank position.
All right, so we are getting the all good sign. These teams are ready to play, which means I hope our casters, Dream and Rich Rad, are equally ready. Guys, on over to you.
Hello and welcome for that wonderful throw right now to us. Again, this is Rich Rat along with my co-caster Dream. How are you doing today, Dream? And are you looking forward to these matches?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm definitely looking forward to this set between Polar Ace and Feeders. We've seen Feeders in the past. Polar Ace is looking strong coming in as well, so I'm really excited to see these two teams face off.
And again, I know that they were talking briefly about it, even just, some of the information by Tydra on the Pharah play. It'll be interesting to see, since we know that we have Aiko being that Widowmaker and primarily on the hit scan, even though they do have versatility, in such a large amount of DPS players. They say that he can play any DPS character, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how they try and manage that Pharah play and overall just aggression by Tydra.
Agreed. Tydra is really the centerpiece of a lot of their compositions, whether it's on the Pharah or the Brigitte, as the desk mentioned. And the Widowmaker is a very good counter to both of those heroes, right? If the Brigitte does not take the right angle, the Pharah can really punish her from above, and she has to hold her shield if she wants to, stay safe from Widowmaker. And you don't want your Brigitte just holding shield all the time, right? So a lot of pressure going to be on Tydra to continue to perform as we move here onto Gardens.
And again, we are hoping to maybe see some Wrecking Ball. Doesn't look like we're going to see it here as we do go on to this first map with Lijiang Tower. And it looks like we're going to have a triple tank, triple support composition coming out. Actually, yeah, they're switching around just a little bit here. So again, it'll be interesting to see Polar Ace coming out with that composition.
Yeah, Polar Ace still not quite having made a decision on what they're going to run yet. I'm pretty confident that feeders with benefits are going to go with what they're showing now, though. A dive based around Tydra's Pharah and having Lunacy on that Tracer to clean up kills from the spam damage. And it looks like we'll be opting with Eiko playing the hit scan, not the Widow, actually the Soldier this time around.
All right, and they're going to go ahead and try and convene towards this control point, which is going to activate in 20 seconds here, and they're looking to get some, pharmacy composition high overhead to deal some damage in the back end. It's going to be an early kill coming out here onto Eiko on the 76. Numbers advantage in favor with Polar Ace now at the disadvantage, losing another, and they're just going to try and tuck them into this house in the back.
Yeah, Tydra's getting a ton of kills to open up already, almost with the barrage available, trying to clean everyone up in this house off the side of the point, but with control, feeders may be able to get this initial cap here.
And they already have the ultimate. Tydra doing so much damage here on this point, getting ready for this next engage, and they've been able to capture it, and it'll be interesting to see how you're going to say Polar Ace maneuver. If they're going to go from that flanking back position to try and create a smaller choke point here, and they don't want to go near that bridgeway to get knocked off by Tydra.
Yeah, if Tydra plays conservatively here as they rotate, there's not really a way to prevent him from getting a good barrage angle.
And now they're going to start penetrating onto this point. 20% here still as they're going to look to continue climbing overhead. It will be the rocket barrage. Tydra getting two, both Doge and also Ninja going down 3 total, as now they're most likely going to have to fall back here. Polar Ace is not going to be able to sustain anymore and doesn't want to give up more of their kills, but that's going to be it. A full team kill here.
Only the DPS ultimates invested there from the side of feeders, so you love being able to tick up to nearly 50% while being able to hold on to all your other ultimates. But we do see Wild Wingback swapping onto the Pharah to try and get the counter, and Eiko also matching the Tracer. So they want to mirror this composition, but with a boosted body shot from a mile away, Hydra already takes Eiko out. This Pharah is looking really dominant here.
And they're going to have to try and respond with it. I mean, they look to switch onto Far to look to contest against it, to try and go 1-for-1, but really don't have the opportunity to take her out. We are going to need to see that hit scan to most likely try and turn this back around, as they're now about to reach 70%. They've only got 30 left to really make a big difference on this next impact.
Eiko agrees with you, decides to move on to the Widow, and is already putting pressure onto Tydra, who's falling back. This may be what they need to get room to get safely onto the point, but no, Eiko's fallen again.
Unbelievable. Great silence here coming out from Tydra, using that positioning overhead to get the early kill, but now they're looking to turn it back. A lot of attention focused onto Eiko. Self-destruct high into the air, too high though to really claim any lives, as now they're at 92%. They're going to have to scramble. Starting to get onto the point, you do see Polar Ace pushing forward to try and turn this around. 4 members against 2 as they're nearing this overtime position, and will start to begin. Doge Fighter on the point using that Winston. Primal Rage is also going to come out by Tobinator, and they're just looking to thrash on this point. 2 ultimates by Gummy Bear along with the Zenyatta 4 feeders, and they're going to have to just try and buy some time here. Self-destruct now coming out, just being tucked outside this corridor. Still going to look to keep this 99% into the overtime. 4 members now, and they're looking to just completely push the rest of Polar Ace off this point, and that's going to be it. Round 1, 0 to 100 for feeders.
Dominance that we see on Gardens, right? And with our experience, Tydra's Pharah in the past, not super surprising to see him run it on this map. It's not always the case that you can continue running the Pharah, though, especially as we move on to Control Center. So it may be that Polar Ace is able to kind of get away with not having to counter it. Tydra's going to have a much more difficult time on a map like Control Center here. It's a much more tank-centric map.
And, as you say, we are going to see the switch. It is going to go to the Brigitte. They will have the triple support composition with the Lucio, Moira, and the Brigitte. A great composition. They're going to come out, and they're going to have Lunacy come out now on the Mei for Harass.
So this is an excellent kind of modification of what's traditionally a GOATS comp. Mei is very good at punishing the front line using the wall, especially in this initial fight in server room.
And they've already been able to block off a majority of the team with that Mei wall, and going to immediately follow up here onto Eiko, taking it out again. Another numbers advantage. Feeders having a 6v5 right now, and already forcing them away from this point, which is open in about 5 seconds.
And the Reinhardt is such an important pick, right? Usually you go for the Rein, but if you can get the Zarya, take it. Any pick will give you enough of an advantage to get on the front of this point, and that's almost a free cap off of just a Mei wall invested here.
It really is. Again, just isolating them away. Now going to completely dominate on this pressure right now, forcing them back. Fighter getting very low, does go down, unfortunately, by Lunacy, and they are going to now continue to push them back. Again, numbers advantage for Feeders, and they're just going to have to retreat now. Oh no, and Eiko getting separated once again by the wall.
So much stagger coming out from Feeders, and they haven't had to invest these big cooldowns. They're getting the picks using just the wall and the Brigitte stun, and that's allowed them to build up to these big ultimates. And Talbinator now in prime position in the choke with an Earth Shatter, and Lunacy camping with the wall as well.
And they're going to have the support ultimates shortly after. It's going to be 3 ultimates. Wow, 4, almost full 6. Coalescence now is going to be used, though, for Polar Ace, trying to see if they can gain some opportunity here, but the Blizzard going to start locking them down. Pin going to come in the back gate, taking Fighter out of this on the Reinhardt, as now the support ultimates will be unloaded. Rally, along with the sound barrier, completely pushing them back away from this point, and they're just going to have to go back into that ship.
To add insult to injury there, Eiko's grab was eaten by Gummy Bear as they entered into the point. So not only do you get shut down, but you invest the Graviton and don't get anything out of that. That's gotta hurt. You like the Zarya pick into a Mei comp, you're probably not gonna swap here. You just have to find a way to build up your energy, get another grab rolling here.
Now we're going to see Bat switch onto the Junkrat, trying to use that explosive damage on the front since they are in this tight position, needing to make some headway here. This is going to be the last opportunity for them to really push forward. Another pin coming into the back by the charge by Eiko, and this is the last chance for them to engage this.
Yeah, they're pushing in. It's not going to be enough to get these initial picks. The self-destruct comes in, splits the team up, and that kill onto Tobinator with the beat is going to be enough for the attempted flip to come in. They're going to touch the point in time here.
Self-destruct coming into the back, able to at least get the D-Mech here onto Night Raven. Now they're going to have to once again collapse onto it in desperation, not having the full team just yet, starting to regroup, as it will be the Coalescence used in the back by Riza. Earth Shatter will be dropped as well for this map to try and see if they can claim the first map of this day at 99% to 0. Just continuing to brawl back and forth. Eiko going to drop the grab now, not going to be eaten this time. Gummy Bear is not going to be in the mech to take it out, with Blizzard looking to lock them down. Overtime ticking away. The longer they stay on this point, the sooner it will shred away once they push them off this point. Riza going away, and that's going to be it. Not going to be able to hold any longer here, and Feeders will take this first map of Lijiang Tower.
That last fight really felt close. It felt like it could go either way, but the map overall was pretty dominant, I would say, from Feeders. Their teamwork working out. Here we see Gummy Bear on the Diva getting the cleanup here on one of the early fights in the first round on Gardens, and I really think we saw some solid play from Gummy Bear, staying alive, never giving up that mech, and I think that was a big difference between the two teams. We had a little bit maybe of over-aggression from the side of Polar Ace's tank line, and we didn't have those same issues when it came to Feeders.
You're very, very right. And again, as we talked about it briefly, we were looking at the SR difference here between the two teams. And, you know, with Polar Ace having that type of aggression in their composition, which they're used to, they might have honestly underestimated how Feeders are going to play here. You know, when some people realize, you know, their levels right now in SR, it's going to be that underdog story right now where they're trying to come back and they're going to prove their worth right now. And they're doing very well after we just saw in Lijiang Tower.
Clearly, they are not intimidated whatsoever. When it comes to playing against a team of a higher SR. They're confident, they're ready with their set plays. They came out with the Mei, right? That's becoming a little bit more popular right now. We see it sometimes on Control Center, but it's certainly not something that you would expect teams to have been running forever like a regular GOATS comp. So clearly they're continuing to practice, run these new comps, have set strategies, and that is how you overcome that individual skill disparity.
And, you know, with seeing it, especially now after having it happen multiple times, I believe it was 3 in the total of that last fight, they were able to use that Mei wall to truly isolate 1 to 2 members away from the entire team in those choke points. They weren't able to really regroup with it because that hallway was not easy to maneuver around. They couldn't regroup quick enough to give some assistance there with the supports being locked away by that wall. And just great play overall using of that Mei.
Yeah, tanks are just so vulnerable without, you know, the backline being able to access, being able to support them. And that's really the strength of the Mei wall, being able to cut off that LOS and split the team in half And in these tanky death ball compositions, splitting the team in half is a great win condition, and Mei can do it probably more often than any other hero in the game. So it gives you plenty of opportunities to open a fight with a wall. You get an advantage, use a wall to close off the fight as well, because it's off cooldown again already. So it's one of those really game-changing cooldowns, and if your team can play around it, you have a huge advantage.
Definitely, and we are going to have it begin in 40 seconds right now for these doors to open. We will have the switch, so it is going to be Polar Ace now on the red side, along with Feeders on the left. It will be Feeders in the defensive position first here as the doors are about to go open. And let's see, how do you think this composition is going to be now for Polar? What do you think is going through their mind right now for composition, since they've already seen Feeders do very well on that first control map?
I think they know they're going to have to play into this Widow duel, so they're going to play around trying to support Eiko. Otherwise, if you give that defensive Widow room, they're going to have the advantageous sightlines control of that blue box. So I think both teams are really set around fighting over that blue box control to enable their Widow to kind of wreak havoc on the low ground.
And you'll see that typical early aggression on that catwalk here, seeing if they can get some early damage. Oh, but there's an early pick by Eiko onto Lunacy, and that's going to be, again, you know, that Whittle duel right away. It's going to allow the opportunity now for Eiko to thrive in the back, but here comes the res. They want to use that early, make sure that they have this numbers advantage as they look to try and push onto the car wash.
So the control of blue box does go over to the offense. Polar Ace is taking it over. Now he's aggressively going for this Widow duel despite the pocket. Good defense matrix, though. Gummy Bear, again, the right place at the right time, but it doesn't matter. Eiko with the peak.
And we're seeing so much dominance right now on that Widowmaker. As we saw earlier in it, we know that there is a great level of Widowmaker play from this as they're going to continue pushing. Another shot here coming out onto Lord Enzo. Another onto the Winston, and that is just Eiko just available to get so many shots in the back line, pushing them back now with 3 minutes to go, and they're already approaching this checkpoint.
With no pressure on Eiko, he just kind of destroys the whole team there, getting tons of cleanup kills, and there was no Zenyatta Discord orb to help out. Those were headshots to clean up those kills. So Eiko definitely proving that if you leave him uncontested, he's going to punish you and get those kills. This is an insane time bank, 5 minutes moving into the second phase of Gibraltar.
Now starting to be on that high ground position. You're going to see them be very cautious now. They have definitely understood the aggression and ability that Eiko has on that Widowmaker, and they're now going to try and find opportunity here to engage. You see them look to hop up top and try and just go 1-for-1 right now with the aggression coming out by Bat as well on the Genji.
Yeah, Talbonator behind enemy lines. Gummy Bear getting chunked down as well. This tank line not able to sustain through the damage output coming out from Polar Ice, so already continuing their charge forward here through the second phase of the map.
And they're having to, again, fall back. Gummy Bear not having that mech, trying to find some opportunity to really get that mech back. Finally does, so they are going to have it as they look to continue trying to prevent them from moving any forward. But now it's still going to be almost this next checkpoint with still remaining 4 minutes and 20 seconds. As you said, that time bank is continuing to grow since they allow themselves to continue this movement with the self-destruct really only gaining one, but really not going to be too much more here.
They invest some ultimates. They've got a lot to burn. They're going to try and get the goal line hold here. Both support ultimates have already expired, and the blade comes out.
And the self-destruct as well, trying to zone them away from this, along with the rally now coming out by Feeders to give some extra assistance on this point. Talbonator on this point continuing to try and survive. Gummy Bear as well, but they're just starting to shred through it. And once again, you do see Eiko on the high ground continuing to get sightline onto this entire team, as now they have 5 minutes and 15 seconds for this last push.
Polar Ace in a great position there. Not only did they get the cap, they get a huge ultimate investment on the defensive side that does not pay off, and they hold on to several critical ultimates of their own right, particularly this Primal Rage and the Valkyrie. They're so good for getting around this difficult corner, right? The sustain you gain really helps you take this like wide open real estate here.
Eiko now going down, unfortunately, but will be immediately rezzed. Again, they want to keep Eiko alive in the back. They're fueling the sightlines for it, so they're going to have to, again, keep a lot of pressure. Tydra looking to get some shots, but can't completely focus solely onto Eiko, as you will see Lunacy now switching onto the Genji, getting a pick here onto Bat, but Eiko getting a D-Mech along with the kill onto the support. Mercy going down on Feeders, and they're just going to continue allowing this payload to move. Primal Rage going to come out here by Dogfighter on the back line, continuing to try and harass against it, and that's going to be it. They'll just be able to push the rest of the way uncontested.
They just completely zone the defense from Feeders off of the cart entirely as they kind of waltz in to complete the map. more than 4 minutes on the clock in time bank after completion on Gibraltar. I'm not even used to seeing, 2 minutes on a good day. Over 4 is a pretty exceptional offense, and that really only happens when you don't lose a single fight.
And again, that's got to be a lot of pressure here on the psychology of feeders. They came out very strong on the first control point. They were really confident going into this. And then now that they're going to be on this payload type of map to escort, they're going to really just have to need to be very careful of how they want to take this. Again, they already have seen the dominance by Eiko with the Widowmaker. You will now see Lord Enzo going on to the Widowmaker as well. And honestly, if they do not focus Eiko out of this fight right away, that is going to be so easily punished on this attack.
I like the comp that we saw initially from the offensive side. The offensive side of Polar Ace. That Widow Genji, that's a similar composition to what I would prefer to see from feeders coming out. That's the best composition for this first point to pressure the enemy Widow. Being able to use that Genji, those dive tanks to get in the Widow's face gives enough room for your own Widow to operate, even if they may not be able to just win that head-to-head duel. So I would really love to see that Genji come out. I'm not sure if Tydra has it in his hero pool, though. And that's the concern that I have, if they will be able to get enough pressure onto Eiko without that Genji.
And as long as they maintain this hold right now, the most difficult part too, especially when you transition from that first checkpoint to the second, those 4 corridors of entry become extremely difficult when you have a defensive Widowmaker like Eiko. If they can't really penetrate through those small corridors, even if they do lose this first point, it's going to be extremely hard for them to push through.
I like this actual option they go for, though. Going for a GOATS comp, deciding, let's just completely opt out of the sniper duel entirely and see if we can't push through. They'll be safe going through the initial car wash. It starts getting a little hairy when they move out around this corner, though, and Widow gets these open sightlines from above.
And they do have some overhead positioning now. They have the advantage here. They could drop down and choose to engage this, and I believe they would have the opportunity here. Now you are going to see it. You will see Fighter drop down along with Knight joining in the back line, trying to contest. Healer's just doing such a great job as both Riza along with Eiko are getting a lot of shots onto this. 3 minutes and 15 seconds still to go, but they're not wanting to commit yet just to this payload, wanting it to go a little bit further, maintaining that high ground position. No real kills yet as they continue to skirmish. It will be now Dogfighter using that Primal Rage to try and throw them away, with the Coalescence going to be used in the back by feeders on the Moira, trying to see if they can buy some time as the Earth Shatter is going to come up though by Talbinator, wanting to find a window here to use it, but that shield is going to prevent it from the Winston on Polar Ace. Now there's the Earth Shatter, self-destruct coming out, wanting to claim at least anybody, but is it going to happen? Just under 5 meters to go, and they want to force Polar Ace off this payload, but still Eiko high overhead with the sightlines and looking to keep them away.
This has been an insanely long fight. Even more ultimates being invested. The beat coming out from Lord Enzo. Eiko still no pressure, just not able to burst through the healing. Finally finding a pick, and with the majority of the sustain down, that's going to be a hold coming out from the defense. And this is brutal from the side of feeders with benefits here. We do have a pause coming out, but that is really difficult because not only do you lose this initial fight, you invest a high amount of ultimates into the fight, and it takes an entire 2 minutes. Usually you get 2 fights in that amount of time. You get 2 cracks at the payload. They really only had that one.
And, again, as you said, with the ability to take out Lord Enzo, dropping that support after the sound barrier was used, it's going to be extremely difficult now, again, to generate those ultimates after half of this time being used. Though you will see feeders coming in with that self-destruct, they at least have something. Of course, you do have Dogfighter with the Primal Rage nearing it, so it'll be at least a 1-for-1 ultimate exchange. But in the grand scale of things, as it is only 5 meters, they'll probably gain a few back on the defensive side. But if they can use that self-destruct, generate potentially one other ultimate to assist with on the Moira, it'll allow them that opportunity to maneuver all of Polar Ace away from it so they can at least start to generate some more time here, reaching this next checkpoint.
Agreed. I really think self-destruct is an underrated ultimate on this first point of Gibraltar, particularly because of this interesting sort of right angle around blue box. You can throw the self-destruct blind over the corner. The enemy team can't really see where it's coming from until it's too late. So with good placement, with good planning, you really can get a ton of value here. This is one of the best parts of Gibraltar to get value out of that ultimate.
And now you see them again slowly progressing forward, hoping to... Oh no, Riza getting a kill early onto Lord Enzo with another follow-up. I'm not sure if they're going to want to stay in this fight. You've seen the commitment now come out here by Gummy Bear along with the Winston by Talbinator, and they're going to be in a difficult spot now. Most likely going to have to fall back, regroup, use this last opportunity to really push, because now they're starting to run the clock.
Yeah, they decided that with all those ultimates expended, they didn't want to stay on the tank comp, and they've moved on to their own double sniper. That's going to be their answer to try and punish Wild Wingbat on the Brigitte, right? Those two crossfire heroes have a great ability to punish Wild Wingbat on the low ground, but they have to be able to get in position to use those sightlines, right? And if they can't get in, that's never going to happen. Finally, Tydra gets a pick, though.
And now it's going to be the numbers advantage here for Feeders. You're going to get the res to come out, so it's a 6v6. The self-destruct coming out by Gummy Bear, not claiming what they wanted, and now you're going to have the ace. Oh, Polar Ace getting 2 with Night Raven on the self-destruct. Aiko now going to clean up with 50 seconds, and they're in a very difficult spot. And you do see Polar Ace still being able to maintain both support ultimates, soon to have the third for this last encounter.
The only way the kills are going to be coming out for the offense is they're going to have to rely on the burst damage from these snipers. They do have 2 heroes that can give them that opportunity, but again, they have to find a way around the corner. The supports, the squishy heroes, are going to be playing safely around these sightlines. With only 20 seconds left to go, no ultimates on the board. The pressure is really, really on here for Feeders.
And you're going to see that early rally coming out here by Polar Ace to make sure that they can withstand the incoming damage. Soon to have Fatty Ninja as well. Aiko getting the early pick here onto Tydra, having the disadvantage in numbers. You get the res, though, making it a 6-for-6. Losing another, though. Talbinator not going to be able to get onto it, and that's going to be going into overtime. Still trying to maintain on this point. They do have positional advantage for Polar Ace. Transcendence is going to come out by the Zenyatta for Feeders, looking to continue pushing them back. 1-for-1 now. Both Transcendences being used. The damage boost is coming out by Fatty Ninja on the high ground to give that extra damage to try and secure this payload to move no further, as that's going to be overtime with nobody able to get on the payload.
And that's going to be it, a full hold. So Polar Ace returns the initial Li Zhang with another strong performance. So we're tied up 1-1 going into half. We're going to see a self-destruct from Night Raven here as the play of the game. I believe this was at the end, throwing it out. No, this isn't going to be a self-destruct, actually. This is just a cleanup at the end of the fight for Polar Ace. That's a lot of teamwork required for a D.Va to get a sort of naked play of the game there with no ultimate thrown in whatsoever. I don't know. I really feel like the D.Va play had a big thing to do with the success that we saw from Polar Ace. Night Raven looked exquisite, was able to keep everyone alive, always had defense matrix available.
And, I agree, especially when it came to, the assistance by the Mercy play. Having it coupled with the D.Va overall, you saw right at the end, especially with the Valkyrie, you used it for the extra damage boost when you needed it to get into the back line, harass the supports, get them low so that you can have Aiko just get the follow-up immediately on this defensive position, allowing them to really just dominate, especially in that very last instance when you already saw Feeders getting to the point of them needing to be, in that crunch time. Like, they had this last opportunity, and with such aggression coming out by that D.Va Mercy play, it was devastating for them on the defense.
Yeah, the D.Va Mercy are just so good at sustaining, keeping everyone alive, and that's why we saw Aiko so safe on the high ground, and Riza as well, right? On the Zenyatta, not really under any threat, able to call out those discords, build up the Transcendence very quickly, and kind of drop down from that high ground with the sustain ultimate when needed.
And, as you said with the communication, let's even, take it further here. Let's switch over to the analyst desk and see how they felt about that combination with the D.Va Mercy and communication as a whole.
This was, the last time I got to watch Feeders, and Frito, you were with me on that one, we watched them struggle on control point, but then rally back on Gibraltar, and we've seen the exact opposite of that today. And I'm curious to see if you saw, or hear if you saw anything that really stuck out about why we saw such a flip from Feeders.
Well, the first map, Li Zhang, came down to compositional choice, I think, largely, and as well just making the plays that mattered. But when it went on to Gibraltar here, what we just saw, it was big plays on the defense, ultimately by Polar Ace. a combination of things I think really went well for them. Their dive tank's doing a great job stalling and staying alive, making use of that healing. But the combination, I think, of Eiko and Riz, the Zenyatta player up top, dishing down the damage, and namely, I would say the game-saving play probably was Riz's Transcendence timing, which allowed for their Diva player to remech. And if you it's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine to watch the Goats comp get countered. So I was really happy to see such good team play there in order to stall the objective versus a comp that wins objectives just by standing on them a lot of the time.
Speaking of that Goats comp being kind of dissected a little bit, Lofty, what did Polar Ace do to really just break that down? Because it looked like they were going to be able to grab that point, and then just the tables turned on them and they shut the door hard. What was the moment?
Well, it was just the amount of patience that Polar Ace were investing into their defense. They allowed the cart to gain so much space, and they just juggled their front line between high ground and low ground, trying to get them to commit abilities, trying to get them to commit cooldowns, shield bash, flame strikes, and bubbles, and all of that stuff, kind of juggling the abilities of the beaters. And in doing so, they're opening up opportunities for them to be ready to take on their backline without any contest. And that's exactly what they did. They opened up enough space for Eiko to get the shots in. Again, while not being able to kill anything, was able to chunk out the tanks a decent amount. And it was just a war of attrition from there, with the Polar Aces coming out on top.
Okay, all right. So we saw Eiko just, dominate the offensive round with that Widowmaker play, and definitely get a little revenge, because he was getting picked on in that Li Zhang matchup. What was the change? What allowed that, just from a Widowmaker that wasn't able to get much value to just all of the sudden the entire kill feed was Eiko all of the time? Frito.
A map change can do a beautiful thing for a player oftentimes. I mean, this is Widow's home turf, Gibraltar, right now in the meta. Because if you think about it and you look at the different things that Feeders with Benefits was trying to toss at them, there wasn't really any other answers besides your own Widowmaker hitting shots, ultimately, is what it was going to be required for them to bust through. Other things perhaps they could have tried is like a triple tank dive with Wrecking Ball. Again, I'm always trying to sneak in Wrecking Ball, I suppose. But there wasn't much more they could do. Eiko has all the room. They have the Brigida and triple support, which is a team comp that's built to basically say, our front line's not moving. You're not going to be able to focus it down. You have to attack the Widow and beat us with range, because we're actually operating at a range deficit unless our Widowmaker player carries, and he did.
That's a great point. Widowmakers are, a little controversial. Some people don't enjoy watching them dominate. I personally do. I think it's, especially with all the trick shots, and Eiko definitely pulled off some pretty ones. Now, Lofty, moving into our next map, now it's not confirmed yet where we're going to be going, but what is something that Polar Ace is going to need to do to keep this dominance moving forward?
Well, it's interesting that we brought the series up to 1-1. The Feeders, despite the SR advantage, have shown that they can compete with the top dogs. It's all about preparedness, readiness, and adaptability. We saw a bit of a weakness in that, a bit of a kryptonite for Polar Ace is not being able to adapt to the Mei on Control Center, not being able to adapt to the Pharah. And so if Polar Ace want to continue this momentum, they have to play that game of adaptation, where if the Feeders come with some wonky strategy or some pocket pick that they may not necessarily have a lot of scrim experience against, they better be ready to improvise.
Yeah, so here's my next one. So we were going to either Lunar Colony or Temple of Anubis. We'll start with you, Frito. Of these maps, where do you think we should head for Feeders to help turn the tide back in their favor?
Well, after seeing Eiko put on that performance, I think anything that gives a Widowmaker line of sight, you want to run away from. And I think both maps you can play Widow on, but I think historically we've seen Temple be a bit more favored for that. So if I was in Feeder's shoes, I would send it to Horizon Lunar Colony. They can try to run the Goats comp. Neither map really highlights their spectacular Pharaoh play. So in either case, I think this one's going to be a bit of a struggle, because really, I think the win condition for Feeders is to get Tydra on Pharah.
Okay. And Lofty, do you agree with Frito?
Oh, 100%. I was actually going to mention Temple of Anubis being such a strong map to play Widow on defense as well as on attack. I wouldn't imagine them picking at, especially after Eiko's performance. But also, Lunar Colony allows for a bit more of a variation in strategy, which I think Feeders can take advantage of if the Polar Aces are not prepared for whatever they have to bring to the table. So definitely Horizon Lunar Colony giving them the edge over that.
All right, we are ready to get into the second half of this game. It's been exciting so far. We're 1-1 going into this second half, so it is still anybody's game. Rich Rad, I hope you are ready because we are definitely excited to see who's going to come out on top.
You are very
On
right.
to
And
you.
again, you are very right. And again, as we do switch it over here to myself again, Dream, as they kind of, went over it and saw what we're going to need to look forward to here, we're going to go into temples. And how do you feel about that?
I agree with what we heard from the desk regarding the Widowmaker tendencies from map to map, and I think that my initial reaction is I too would have expected Horizon, especially since we saw goats on a map that you don't traditionally see it on the first point there of Gibraltar. But maybe that's the trend. Maybe that's the strategy. Is they like running goats on maps where goats isn't quite as common, and they're going to try and throw teams off here on Temple of Anubis. I think there is a lot of strength on the second point with those tank heavy compositions. But if they are opting into the Widow duel, I feel like that may be a mistake.
I agree. I mean, as we've already seen it, that Widow duel is very, very questionable. And going into that, you have to accept that. Like, you shouldn't allow, the ego aspect of playing to really take away from it. Like, if you honestly acknowledge that, what, there is somebody who is in a better position right now than I am, especially in that Widow duel, you have to allow that to just be understood by the entire team, and that's fine to respect it. But wanting to change that comp, and again, as you see the goats into untraditional, I guess, environments, they may again try, like you said, to throw them off, get them off, off their guard, thinking, hey, we're not really typically used to seeing this. How are we going to handle it? What do we do? We're in the moment. We're thinking rapidly to try and contest against it.
Exactly. And the strength of Anubis is certainly on the second point. There isn't quite as much Widow, and you can get very creative with the compositions that you run, particularly on the defense of the first and second point of Anubis. So they may just have some creative compositions, some high ground defenses that we could see either Orisa-based or dive-based. So they do have a lot of room to play with. Just because they're going to Anubis doesn't necessarily mean they're running that Widow. They're just probably going to have an answer for Eiko's Widow. And again, we haven't yet seen Tydra come out on the Genji, which is traditionally on Anubis point A how you contest the enemy Widowmaker.
Yes, I agree, and we'll hope to see it. If we can really get Tydra in the back to harass Eiko, it's going to open up a lot of opportunity here for feeders to really start to push against this. And once they at least get into it, as we typically see, that second point becomes a very drawn-out fight to see if you can just, withstand that incoming pressure over and over again. So between both of these teams, we've seen at least the few attempts now when it comes to that overtime position that they've got a very lengthy, drawn-out fight, and they're both willing to commit to it and do very well under pressure. So we'll have to see if that's going to be something we're also going to see here, because Temple of Anubis is known for that in point B.
Particularly Temple of Anubis right above other control map, or I'm sorry, 2CP maps. It is insane the amount of time that can be drawn out, as particularly point B, as you say. That's why we sometimes see some creative defensive comps, because you can get away with more stall-related heroes, things like the Mei, or things like Doomfist that can just get back to the point with incredible speed and potentially get a pick on top of that, in their movement to the point there. So Wrecking Ball is also a hero we're seeing more and more come out on this map. Such a good disruptor, especially on Anubis, because on both of these points, it's kind of difficult to get your front line and your back line onto the point together. And Wrecking Ball is one of those heroes that's very good at splitting your team in half. And we've seen both teams kind of try and make that happen, kind of dividing the front line off from the back line. It's something that cutting off access to those supports just works so well when you want to get picks.
Agreed. And like with using that, I'm hoping that we see the Wrecking Ball. As we looked at the team sheet, we did see that there was some opportunity to potentially see it coming out here by Gummy Bear. So I want to see it. And again, with Wrecking Ball being that newer character that everyone is still really getting comfortable with, they want to figure out where the best and most optimal places are to use it. And as you said, with the disruption between that front and the back line, we already saw it again earlier this in Lijiang Tower with Mei. They were great on their positioning. They were able to separate the team. If they can manage to do the same thing here with that type of disruption on the Wrecking Ball, it's really going to give them a window of opportunity to try and claim victory here on Temple of Anubis.
Exactly. And another hero that can often partner with Wrecking Ball and is also a pretty effective counter or disruptor to what Wrecking Ball wants to do is the Ana. She's been making it more and more back into the meta. She's very good at enabling, kind of pocketing her own very aggressive Wrecking Ball, but also Sleep and that anti-heal are very effective against Wrecking Ball when he's trying to dive in. So it really can be a war between those two heroes, particularly on this map. And I really, really enjoy seeing Ana in the meta, right? I just like that support diversity. And particularly the second point where you have these far back corners that the supports can kind of retreat to. Ana can play fairly safely, and you don't really get punished as much by these aggressive dive heroes. I'd like to see that come out from one of the teams on the second point here.
And as we were saying, and as we said, with the Ana play being such a great change, especially with the recent patch allowing the nano boost to generate that healing opportunity, the range on it, there was so much benefit to start forcing it back into the meta. And again, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see it. And you make a very valid point here with the Ana coming in.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. It's going to be great when they do end up playing on Anubis. It is going to be a few minutes before the game gets started. We'll be headed to a short 5-minute break before the match gets going, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly.
Hello and welcome everybody back from our short break that we did have. As again, just to refresh, we are going into Temple of Anubis. It will be Polar Ace on the right side as red, along with Feeders now on the left. And again, Dream, we are looking forward to a good matchup, even though we really weren't expecting it. You know, we wanted to see Horizon come out, but we're gonna, opt to Temple of Anubis as we said. And I'm like I said, we still want to see that Wrecking Ball. We want to see it come out. Let's be real.
Wrecking Ball is great on both maps. That's what I love about Assault in Open Division's map pool this time around, is that you can run Wrecking Ball no matter which map is chosen. So I'm certainly hoping to see that hero come out as we move on to Anubis. What I am really, really going to be looking for is once teams get that initial push onto a point, if they can stay alive long enough to get the completion. That's a big difficulty on first and on second. It's not just touching the point, but it's keeping your backline safe as you kind of transport your entire team to the point.
Very true. And again, with Polar Ace now on the attack first, it will be interesting to see how Feeders is going to defend against this. We already saw in the prior map with Watchpoint Gibraltar the aggression coming out so heavily on Polar Ace, and they were just unable to be stopped. And, again, with this not being the escort, we're going to see how they're going to be able to manage this aggression by Polar Ace. And, we're going to see that Lucio coming out here by Fatty Ninja. And I guarantee you they're going to get onto this point as quickly as possible and just shove Feeders off.
And Feeders on the defense is going to be setting up with the classic Orisa defense. I like this further forward hold. You kind of prevent the offense from even getting into the point whatsoever. And crucially, Hydra finally pulling out that Genji. That's what I've been wanting to see, is how can he perform when flexing onto this Genji. This is one of the best Genji maps in the game, so I'm really excited to see that come out.
And now going to, like you said, be on that middle high ground so that they can already get set up here. 3 seconds until the doors open, and you will again see this just quad tank composition coming out. Early shots coming high overhead by Lunacy, and they're going to try and get a pick, but it's not going to happen. They're going to have to fall back right now.
And quad tank with a Winston rather than where we usually see that Roadhog, they're just going to speed boost directly onto the point here.
You see now the jump onto the high ground. That Zenyatta from Feeders unfortunately going to have to retreat. An early pick onto that support, only going to leave Lord Enzo on the Mercy as they're just going to start pushing them back, and now they're in the good position. You see Feeders still on that middle high ground, now going to have to transition and force themselves onto this point with the numbers disadvantage. 3 minutes and 25 seconds. They have a lot of time and already are going to get the second tick and look to get the third here as they finally clean up this first point.
Wild Wing Bats Winston was excellent there. Usually you run a Roadhog with that quad tank to look for picks. He's not as good at getting picks on Anubis because of that high ground, so they just use Winston instead and have the Winston dive on the high ground to get the picks instead. It's a really interesting adaptation, and now with this much control, they're over halfway towards their Graviton. They're pushing on a Coalescence as well. Polar Ace is looking to get the snowball cap.
And they have those last-minute switches here onto Feeders, wanting to try and use that composition to their advantage since they are going to lose the ult charge. Here comes Tydra with the concussion mine, though, looking to try and get the few members of Polar Ace away from this point. Those switches had done such a great job for them on this defensive position and completely shutting down this mobility and just movement by Polar Ace.
Yeah, Tydra uses that crowd control from Junkrat to great effect. Usually you think of him more for his big AoE damage, but that disruption from the concussion mines works well against these tank compositions. He does not have that tire yet. That's what he needs to build up quickly, especially with the aggression that we see coming out from Polar Ace. They already have the grab available for Night Raven. They're going to have to find a way to get Echo back in the mech, though.
Now going to be seeing the Coalescence come out by Riza on the aggressive push with 6 minutes to go. Now going to also have the Graviton being used, trying to find the Earth Shatter. Will be dropped as well, trying to isolate them in this corner. An early pick, though, into the back line. It will be bad, able to take down Tydra, but a quick res to keep them on this defense. Still going to get the self-destruct, though, tucked away just behind the pillar. Not going to be able to claim any kills as the shield will come up here by the Brigitte. Bad, able to prevent that, but Tydra getting the kill with the concussion mine. 1 for 1 going back and forth, but it's going to be the respawn advantage here for Feeders. I think they may have this better positioning right now as they're just going to look to try and force Polar Ace once again away from this point as Raven is now going to have to retreat. Oh, and not going to be able to get out.
Lunacy's Reaper switch is so effective against this tank composition, and it's brutal when Night Raven uses that grab. They also invest Doge Fighters Earthshatter, and they don't get anything here. And a lot of that is due to the Ana swap that we kind of expected. Yes, Hyam has moved over to that, and investing that Nano Boost helps you keep Talbinator alive, that central piece of the defense there. So now we have some swaps for the offense. They're going over to the double Shimada Brothers composition, but keeping their tanky front line. They're being a little greedy with their grab ultimate charge here.
And now they're going to try and do an interesting position. Lunacy getting the Death Blossom in the back, but will go down, only claiming 1, an even trade right now. But the Riptire claiming 3, going to shut Polar Ace down immediately, and with a quick follow-up.
Oh, that's an insane value that you get out of the tire from Tydra, who's been looking great here. Maybe the Genji flex wasn't exactly what they needed, but the Junkrat is certainly working out for them. And we finally see Night Raven move off of that Zarya. I agree with this. I don't think the grab was worth it. 4 minutes on the clock. They started out with a very healthy time bank, but Feeders holding strong so far on second, and they're looking to continue off the back of this Earthshatter from Talbinator.
Moving into it now again with 4 minutes remaining. You are going to see an even 1-for-1 ult charge, but Feeders looking to come back now. You are going to have Lord Enzo use the Nano Boost along with the Earthshatter. Ultimates coming out from all corners, using the self-destruct as well to try and zone them away. They want to try and secure this defensive point to push Polar Ace back once again, but so many ultimates were used and was not able to gain as much out of it. They're going to need to be careful now, since we do see Riza with that Coalescence, and actually they're still looking to push them back. They did a great job there. Those ultimates were very well received on this defensive hold, with Tydra hoping to have that ultimate once again.
Exactly. They do invest several ultimates, but as long as you get the hold, that's what's most important. Particularly, the difficulty here is going to be the blade coming up from Echo, but Tydra's tire is a great option to potentially shut that down. Genji obviously cannot deflect the damage from that tire here.
Ult economy in favor of Polar Ace, moving on that right-hand side from the attacking position, going to force the Coalescence now by Riza, but the Riptire is going to be used, looking to hold it into the back, tucking it away with Dragon Strike coming out, trying to find the opportunity to claim more than just 1 life with this, only at least getting Echo though. The Dragon Blade isn't going to be available as they continue to skirmish on the point. A heavy aggression coming now onto Talbinator, with a self-destruct now coming out as well by Night Raven in the back as it's looking to land, but isn't going to happen. Still looking to try and hold onto it. Gummy Bear no longer having the mech. Primal Rage going to come out as well by Polar Ace, and they are just thrashing and spending a lot of time here as Lord Enzo gets the res back onto Gummy Bear. Not going to let that respawn happen in time. Will manage to get the Dragon Blade now, getting to Echo, going nuts, taking down Tydra and Lunacy on the support and DPS, but the respawn advantage is still in favor of Feeders. Slowly but surely trickling out here and allowing them to waste a lot of time and investing several ultimates here. It's going to be an even 2-for-2, hopefully going to be 3 here finally with Polar Ace as they look to retreat once again.
Despite Wild Wing Bat showing up big on the Hanzo, staying alive and putting out a ton of damage, it was not enough. Yes, Hyam and Lord Enzo pocketed each other, kept each other safe in Darkroom off to the side, never exposing themselves, and were able to stay alive, crucially sustaining Feeders here. Now we have both teams swapping onto the Sombra, going to be fighting over control of this low ground health pack, and it looks like the offense already has the hack. Echo has taken over that Mega. That's not big for the ultimate generation, but it's great to deny these dive tanks like Diva and that aggressive Brigitte from being able to go down and get that sustained.
And now you're going to see the dive come in. You did get Night Raven back into the back. Here comes the Dragon Strike into the back, trying to get a kill. Isn't going to happen with a Lucio Sound Barrier coming out by Fatty Ninja. In return, another self-destruct, looking to try and claim anybody, but isn't going to happen. Res coming out now by Lord Enzo to get up their frontline tank of Reinhardt as they look to try and continue holding. Self-destruct looking to claim another, but isn't going to happen. No self-destruct gaining any kills here as they continue to push with just over 1 minute. Talbinator having that Earth Shatter, needing to find some opportunity to use it. Tydra going now onto the Doofus, but the EMP is going to land, dropping so many right now, allowing them to continue this hold with 55 seconds to go for Polar Ace to try and have one last major attempt here.
Giant EMP shatter to close everything out, and then the stagger to follow on Night Raven means at best we're gonna have 30 seconds left for the offense to try and complete here. Feeders looking strong on their map pick of Anubis. The question is, can Echo get in and get the big EMP? The supports are still hiding. They want to try and stay separate from the tanks. They don't want to be one big juicy EMP target altogether here.
Now Echo in the back, getting it not seen at all, is tucked behind the corner, looking for that big EMP, is going to be able to get it onto 3, I believe, pushing them back with 15 seconds to go. You are also going to have Fighter again. He forced that Primal Rage just in time, staying alive as they do start to get this first point. 10 seconds to go, and looking to get at least any tick right now to try and claim victory, pushing them back, getting some assistance here onto the supports. Yes, Hyam going down, as now there's only one member remaining. Overtime starting to trickle in, as this is going to be the last opportunity for them to take this. All of Feeder's going to be brought down, now starting to rely solely on this respawn advantage, having them get to this halfway point for the second tick. Now we're going to see the Gummy Bear along with the other self-destruct coming out by Polar Ace. Nobody going to be taken out once again. 2 ticks looking for the third, knocking them back, and will manage to claim this second point in round 1 for Polar Ace.
Feeders does give up the point in overtime. Now, when we think back to how things looked after point A and how quickly that cap went in, you've actually got to be pretty happy with how the remainder of your defensive round went as Feeders. Forcing it all the way to OT is a great result, and if you can complete the map with more than a minute left, all you have to do is get that tick, right? Because you forced all the way to that OT for the offensive side. That's a huge advantage as long as you can take advantage of it, right? You have to finish with more than 1 minute in the bank to force that advantageous situation.
Agreed, and we are going to have these teams now assemble here with these last 10 seconds, and I'm thinking we're going to see Polar again want to use that Orisa combination again. We see it so very much. It's so typically used on this map, whether it's at that middle high ground or in the upper high ground, to really give some great coverage here for the Widowmaker and allow those supports to have some great coverage. And again, you're going to see Bat now coming out here on the Junkrat, who is also ideal when it's on that high ground position, throwing a lot of damage into that front line choke point to just get some early pick damage onto the offensive team of Feeders. And we actually may just see the Wrecking Ball now.
This is an interesting defensive comp, running the triple DPS and kind of one support in the Mercy and then sort of Riza on that support tank hybrid. But they have Night Raven, who's been playing Diva for them, flexing onto the Widow. So maybe this is their answer to playing the Widow on the defense. It's interesting that we're not going to see Aiko continuing to play that, right? That's been their Widow player so far, but it looks like they're putting more priority on the Sombra, and Sombra is another good hero against the Hammond, the Wrecking Ball. So if Lunacy does roll out, no, he does end up swapping onto the Widowmaker, but still very good against these dive heroes as an anti-dive mechanism. And that's what we see from the Brigitte, from the Junkrat, from the Orisa. So it looks like they really want to batten down the hatches and punish the dive as it comes in.
And the damage is going to come out again very high right now. You get so much damage again by Bat on that Junkrat, already generating 45% of an ultimate here on that middle high ground, and that's the strength of Junkrat as they look to now completely ambush onto the middle ground and get an early pick, though, making it a 6v5 in favor of Polar Ace.
Man, when you jump in as Winston and you get Brigitte stunned and trapped and just blown up at point blank range, that's not something that feels really good. That's the counter dive composition working exactly as you want it to for the defense here from the side of Polar Ace. So that's exactly what you like to see. We're going to have to see Taubinator come up with another approach. Otherwise, we'll see him just get blown up there. Maybe a little more support from Gummy Bear would be needed.
And Aiko's in the back already, waiting to find that sideline here onto either the Widow or to the support. He's going to look to try and contest in the back. Lunacy not going to have any sort of sightlines with the Riptire going up the high ground, looking to get into the back, trying to get a kill here, wanting to get the supports. Does manage to get Lord Enzo along with Riza getting the kill onto Yeshiam, and that's going to be a great defensive hold here. And now you're going to see Feeders in a very difficult position in that corner, forcing the retreat.
Orisa up on the Mega by herself, though, potentially in trouble, barely going to get out safely here, getting chunked down, but healed up by Fatty Ninja, so a little aggressive, but able to escape. Now, there's a little bit of an opportunity for Lunacy here, but no, gets punished for the grapple shot, so this is going to be a continued hold for the defense.
And again, you do see them still straggling in the back. Tydra, along with Gumby Bear, finding the chance to try and retreat here. They did have the opportunity onto Polar Ace because they were staggered. They were all over this bridgeway in the middle high ground, trying to regroup and find a chance to get a good holding point. And I think that Feeders just wasn't able to capitalize on that.
They weren't at all, and now Aiko is looking for a flank on the Sombra, wants to punish the Widow, and also has the EMP available to punish the rest of the team if they try and push through the choke. This is a great position for Aiko to be in, as long as he doesn't go down to the Widowmaker here.
Now they're going to start diving onto that middle high ground. Dragon Blade is going to come out by Tydra. some huge value out of this, at least able to get the supercharger out of this fight so that they do not have the damage. Oh, and that's another great kill here with the Primal Rage coming out by Feeders in the back onto Bat. Early res, though, going to come out here onto Fighter, bringing back that Orisa. Self-destruct dropping with now, yes, Hayam using the Transcendence to try and keep the team alive. And there's the EMP overhead, going to allow this push to continue happening here for Polar Ace to hold them back, as they're just going to, again, have a minute and 10 seconds, and the damage is just too much here for Feeders to really handle.
Aiko was actually a little bit out of position at the start of the fight. We saw a good grapple onto the high ground from Lunacy, just kind of ignoring that Sombra. But it doesn't matter. They're able to sustain. Polar Ace does not go down despite the Sombra not being there. And then Aiko shows up with that late EMP, which is an excellent cleanup tool to close out the fight. Under a minute left for the offense, they really have to rely on Tydra being able to build up a blade and get a lot of value out of it. But with the Sombra hack available, the CC that we have from Junkrat and Brigitte, that's a tough ask without a Transcendence, a Mercy Pocket, something to help you out.
And they're going into an ultimate deficit right now. Their economy is lower. You do see Fighter just about to get the supercharger. There it is, Bat having the Riptire. They are setting themselves up here on this defensive position, since you also saw that switch now for Lunacy going onto the Pharah and actually picking into the Widowmaker. Gonna try and go on this left side now.
And the tire comes out. Tobinator going down so early is essential, but Tydra gets an essential pick as well. Maybe gonna get this blade fluxing aggressively onto the point.
And now they're going to try and rush onto it, getting one pick here onto Night Raven, but unfortunately he's going to go down by Riza. Overhead, a lot of damage, still being able to get thrown out by the Pharah, by Lunacy with the assistance of the Mercy. Overtime contesting as they look to try and at least push this for a moment longer. 2 and 2 on the point. A lot of positioning here in advantage of Polar Ace as they're looking to force them back. Yeah, yes, Hayam. Oh, and the EMP is going to come out to lock this down, shutting all of Feeder's players off this point. Nothing left to do, and Polar Ace is going to claim victory on Temple of Anubis.
That's a 2-1 lead now for the side of Polar Ace. They fell on that initial control map, but they're trying to answer very loudly on these second two maps. Tydra's tire coming out as to play the game. We saw a lot of good plays from Tydra's defensive Junkrat. Looking at the positioning there, it's funny to think that all those tanks in the corner were actually on the offensive side. But no, Tydra did show up swapping onto the Junkrat. I really did like to see that, but we, again, didn't see the level on the Genji that you would hope to see when the team's picking into a map like Temple of Anubis. They've got one more pick left, right? We're now on game point for Polar Ace, so Feeders has another chance to pick the map, and they've got to make it count this time.
And hopefully they'll be going with something that they're, extremely comfortable with. You always want to, and you're going to see if there's maybe, an alteration in the composition to help maybe benefit it. We didn't see, that Wrecking Ball coming out. They wanted to stick to something that was a little more standard, that they were comfortable with in their wheelhouse. And, at this point, they're going to have to be in that evaluation mode. They're really going to want to look. They tried to, as you said, have that Genji create so much value for the team. There is so much opportunity because it is such a great pick on that map, and they were not able to execute it. Do they want to maybe, again, try and do some sort of alteration that they're, not as much used to? I mean, again, we saw the Mei, and I think they're able to respond very well to their team. It's just once they start getting into their stride of the comp that they're selected on, they may be, I think, lingering too long on it before the alterations come in. Unless, I don't know. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that they're buying too much time onto those picks?
I wholeheartedly agree, right? I think they have shown some really smart picks, and honestly, we've seen some creative compositions from both sides and some creative solutions back and forth. So I think they do have the right ideas, but I agree that moving on to counter picks or trying to shake up your own composition a little quicker can certainly be beneficial. Now, it looks like we will be moving to King's Row as the hybrid map here. That's the choice of Feeders. This is something I'm a little more comfortable with. I'm surprised we didn't see the Eichenwald choice, Tydra showing a good Pharah there, but that is a map where you're forced to change a little more often, okay? So being able to play King's Row with a very similar composition throughout the whole map, at least offensively, is probably going to play into the favor of Feeders with benefits.
And again, that's very, very true. I very much agree with that. Again, as we've seen it already, they've stayed too long on some of the compositions, and I think it's going to benefit them. And, they are going to be on the defense first, though. And as we've seen, prior, especially by Polar Ace, their aggression is so intense. I mean, I have to say, if I were Feeders, to see this intense gameplay come out right away, time and time again, they're going to have to be very responsive to their movement, where they're looking to engage, what they're trying to do with their composition. And I think that's going to benefit them as well if they allow themselves, on that high ground position. They're looking like they're going to come out with the Orisa. They'll make sure to most likely take that high ground position, evaluate how they're going to enter onto this first point, and then try to capitalize from the high ground position to maybe sever Polar's aggressive push.
Agreed, and that's the strength of the composition that we see coming out that they've selected, right? The Junkrat and Hanzo. Those are two heroes that immediately come to mind when you think, I want to spam, I want to cut off some route of attack. I want to just completely deny it. There's too much damage. They're not going to be able to go that way, especially when Hanzo gets that ultimate up, when Junkrat can zone with the ultimate as well. And I think that's definitely what we'll see the defensive team of Feeders play into here. Offensively, looking like a very tanky, modified 3-3 composition, but Eiko on that Widowmaker, interesting. Usually when you see the 1 DPS, you do see a Sombra here, maybe just going for a quick peek and swapping though.
Potentially, actually, yeah, as you were saying, the early peak here just around the corner. Now I'm going to go on to the Zarya, so it will be the typical Reinhardt Zarya composition, as again, you will see Feeders maintaining this high ground. They're going to try and see where their movement is, and they're looking like they're going to try and contest on the high ground as well.
This is an interesting rotation. They might just speed boost and jump over. You can actually make the jump with the Lucio speed here.
And they will get some great push. They are just going to ambush immediately onto that high ground. A giant skirmish going on that's high ground. Wow, Polar Ace just dominating on that aggressive push. Feeders not ready for it, unable to respond, and they're unfortunately going to have to fall back and try and contest against this, as now it's only going to be Lord Enzo along with the Orisa for Feeders remaining.
In a situation like that, you see them coming, you really need to fall back into the hallway a little bit to take advantage of the fact that you do have the Junkrat, the Zenyatta, the Hanzo that can just spam all down that very narrow passageway and not be so susceptible to this tank rush, but a very effective tank rush using the speed boost from Fatty Ninja's Lucio, and certainly not what, you see that as the regular counter to the Orisa comp. Usually you try and contest the point, force them to fall down, but they say, no, we'll just come meet you on the high ground.
And they responded to that very well in their aggressive push, now pushing so hard down this streets phase, allowing the Brigitte to stay in the back. Bat just holding all its own. Coalescence will be used again just to really make sure that they can get this headway on the streets phase around the bookstore, as they're still going to have an ult advantage. Polar Ace having Bat along with Dogfighter on the front, using the Earth Shatter in the back, looking to knock down a few. Now going to want to follow up, as they do have the assistance by the Zarya. Eiko just giving some great shielding here to take out Yes I Am in the back for the support, not going to sustain it. Eiko getting a follow-up here onto Lunacy, and that's going to be it. Even better push right now for Polar Aces and Feeders. They're just going to, now they have to allow this point to push. They have to let the payload push and regroup.
There's not much they can do here, and because that was an aggressive forward fight from Polar Ace, they won that 5v6, by the way. Wild Wingbat was on the payload by himself the entire time, pushing through. They're going to complete the streets phase of King's Row, only having to take one fight. That is unheard of. That is insane payload management from Polar Ace here.
Do you see Feeders now having almost 5 ultimates, though? If they can slow the momentum for Polar Ace here, that's going to benefit them. Again, the momentum is one of the biggest things right now, and Tydra is going to use that Riptire. Lunacy now coming into the front, using the Rocket Barrage, unfortunately is going to get picked off, though, with the shield getting right into the face. A nice stagger, though, so it will be a 1-for-1 right now. 5 versus 5 as they look to now get the self-destruct in the back. Not able to claim the victory. Lunacy getting back online, so it's a numbers advantage in favor of Feeders, but the Graviton is going to pull them together. Beautiful Transcendence coming out here by the support, keeping them alive, as the self-destruct is not going to claim any kills, with that shield coming up just in time by Talbinator, as the payload still continues to move. Eiko getting a nice kill here early onto the frontline tank for Feeders. They are going to have the respawn advantage, and hopefully going to be able to slow this push here, with this being the real last few minutes that they have.
Yeah, Tydra getting aggressive, knowing that without all of the sustain options there for Feeders, he can just push up and continue to build out towards the ultimate. So they were able to put a stop to that momentum. They finally pumped the brakes on the payload a little bit, but there's still 4.5 minutes. for the offensive side to get it going again. So I want to see Polar Ace play aggressively. They need to force ultimates out of the defense. Now that they've swapped and kind of reset their economy, they've got to kind of catch up. They've got to build up some ultimates while forcing the same cooldowns out of feeders. That's a tough ask, especially when it comes to the tire here.
And now they're swiftly going onto the high ground to try and get the advantage. A nice D-Mech here onto Gummy Bear. Dog Fighter in the back with the Earth Shatter coming out as well, knocking down so many, looking to follow up here as it's going to be now an even exchange. Looking to retreat a little bit, wanting to get back onto the payload as the spawns are starting to come out. Lord Enzo giving great healing as Lunacy, though, is starting to fall, just getting back up in time. Not going to get that environmental pick as they're going to force out the Valkyrie, trying to sustain here, buying some time. Hydra getting the pick in the back with a D-Mech as well. And they're going to reset right now. Polar Ace not wanting to dive any more into this and looking for a regroup.
So they are able to at least force some ultimates out offensively, so you can't be too upset with that as Polar Ace. They start building up towards ultimates of their own. The real issue that you have is that the Blade is kind of the slowest building ultimate on the team. That's really one you want to get up a little faster. Yes, Hayam needs to be able to hold on to this Transcendence for the Blade, but if Tydra's going to fall ahead of time, he may have to pop this early.
Self-destruct coming into the back along with the sound barrier. Eiko getting a double. Ready to, wow, completely shut their numbers down. And now going to look to continue pushing on the high ground, getting another pick here onto Lunacy. Kill so far as the Transcendence is going to be forced by Yeshayam. In the back now, still trying to survive. The Lucio switch is coming out to try and get onto this point as quickly as possible. Still a lengthy amount of time, just under 10 meters to go as they look to keep approaching. Bat now getting the Dragon Blade available just in case, as there's a lot of deflection coming out, but Dog Fighter getting a double, and that's going to be it. A completion on round one for Polar Ace.
As soon as they swap onto the Widow, Eiko makes it happen, punishes the Junkrat. It's really difficult on third point here to play the Junkrat outside of a Widowmaker sightline. So I really like the swap from Eiko and the priority they immediately put on taking the high ground. Polar Ace says, look, we swapped onto the sniper comp. We want to put Eiko on the high ground so he can pop some heads, and it works. They complete right away. And yes, Hayam, maybe not the most value out of that Transcendence, and that prevents them from having that goal line stand that you can often see at the very end of payload maps like King's Row.
And with that, to be honest, with the great triple kill that we saw come out by Eiko, it would have not happened if they didn't have that aggressive tank line to sustain that high ground position. They advanced very quickly with their Lucio, using that ability to get up there, optimize their positioning, then dove down to give that complete open space for Eiko. And I have to give them major props, not to take anything away from the Widowmaker, but the tanks were doing a great job.
Agreed. I think Night Raven has just been a standout anytime that we see him on the Diva, and I do like the flexibility we see from Doge. Doge has not hesitated to swap to any of the three sort of main anchor tanks and has been performing no matter the map, no matter the situation. So I think a lot of credit does need to go over to them, and we are going to see Doge actually flexing onto the Orisa here, so a similar defense to what we saw previously, but they're going to have Eiko playing that comfort Widowmaker, whereas previously we saw the Hanzo defense.
And I'm curious to see if we're going to see feeders do the same thing. They'll come out through these doorways, they'll evaluate the positioning, especially having that Orisa shield going to be shown right from the get-go, but they're not going to have the Lucio speed boost out of this, so they may look to try and choose that more traditional method through the choke point and move just through the hotel on the left-hand side.
They will be able to build up ultimates quickly, particularly Hayam on the Ana. All the spam damage coming out from Junkrat will give you an opportunity to build up to a fast nano. So they may just be looking to poke a little bit. They've got to be careful, though. Eiko pokes pretty hard on the Widowmaker.
And, you know, with Lunacy now on the Roadhog, they cannot manage to have that sustain there. Eiko now on the low ground, out of position. If they go down, they're not going to be able to have that 6 feet 5, and they're starting to optimize with the hook coming out as well, getting Night Raven immediately D-Mech, and they're looking to just jump on this in the back. Great support as Tydra gets the follow-up, though, onto Dog Fighter. The res will come out, but they've already done so much damage with Tydra having so much opportunity here to deal a lot of damage and push them away, and that's going to be a swift capture here by feeders. Oh my goodness.
Tydra and Lunacy popping off here on these projectile heroes. Hanzo and Roadhog love first point King's Row, and we see maybe why feeders decided to opt into this map, not running the traditional Reinhardt attack, but opting for this slow and steady Orisa approach, and the picks go their way.
And I like it because they may not want to look to try and get a swift push, but if they can guarantee the push, regardless of the pace, that may be more comfortable for them. Riptire now coming behind the shield, not going to claim anybody with the Fortify available, but there's the follow-up damage by Dogfighter. Able to take out Talbinator on the front. Early res once again coming out in this fight as they look to want to maintain this just around the corner. Dragon Strike going to come out just through the bookshop. Able to get one, follow-up with the Stormhammer, onto two. Eiko and Riza going down, and there's going to be a pause right in the middle of that encounter.
Man, as this fight is going to be wrapping up, Tydra has been popping off on the Hanzo, saying, I do not want to end this after 4 maps. I'm trying to force this to the map 5 tiebreaker. I want to go back to control. That's where we got our first win. We're going to try and close the series out there as well. And I am really impressed by the flex onto the Hanzo here, landing headshots, prioritizing the right targets, and he's just so strong on King's Row. All these alleyways, these right angles, so good for Hanzo, especially with the short cooldown on that Sonic Arrow.
And, you know, even as we saw it earlier, we saw the play on Junkrat. It was done so well. And, you know, seeing it now on Tydra with the Hanzo, I'm not surprised at all. The positional awareness is great. Even though it's a different type of, you know, overall gameplay from the Junkrat to the Hanzo in some respects, it is being done very well. And you are very correct about the selecting of targets and just finding that opportunity to pick them off. And we are, again, just going to give it another moment or so here. We did have a disconnect on the team of Polar Ace at the moment. But, you know, I mean, honestly, with this momentum through Streets phase, do you think that we're going to see, what do you think the changes may be on Polar Ace now that they've acknowledged that Tydra right now is doing such a large, sufficient amount of damage on this push?
Well, they've really got to decide if they want to go one way or the other. They have 2 options. Either they want to try and win the shield war, and to do that, they're going to have more spam. They already have the Orisa to match what we see from Tobinator, but they're going to have to invest a lot more into a spam composition to be able to break the shield, where you've got Lunacy, Tydra, and Gummy Bear that are all very good at either protecting your own shield or attacking the enemy shield. So you've either got to find a way to win that shield war or dive past the shield. You can either do that using a kind of a Winston comp, a really aggressive Hammond comp, or you can even just speed boost a Reinhardt past the shield. You've got a few ways to do it, but you have to either commit to breaking the shield or just going past it.
Very true. And as we saw as well with Lunacy getting that beautiful hook right at the start, taking Night Raven out of that fight immediately with the DMAC. I think that's also going to be something they really have to watch for. They're going to refresh that shield on the front and really try and prevent that. But Lunacy responded very quickly to that movement by their frontline tank and their supports in the back, peeking it just around the corner of the shield from that dome and able to bring them down again after Eiko was already initially picked off.
Well, what's incredible is usually you see the value of this combo come out with the halt hook, but we saw Tobinator get a halt to pull Widowmaker off of the high ground by himself. Then we saw Lunacy get the follow-up hook afterwards to get a second pick. So instead of having to use those 2 cooldowns together to get one person, they just used them one after the other to get a quick 2 picks and basically secure the cap off of that right away. So that shows the confidence of Tobinator throwing in that halt without calling for Lunacy to follow up on the hook. He's like, no, I'm pulling her off the high ground. We don't even have to use it here.
And we are going to spin this back into the Streets phase, just passing the bookstore. We do have Eiko coming back online, and now going to actually switch onto the Pharah. We do have the pressure still very high by feeders, as now you will see Polar Ace want to fall back, kind of regroup here. They switched, like I said, onto the Pharah and are going to look to get some early damage here in the backline since they don't have the hit scan. But with that hook, though, potentially by Lunacy, you're going to see Eiko be very careful of this engage.
Yeah, he's going to have to try and find some creative angles if he wants to spam around this Orisa shield without getting threatened by the flanking Roadhog.
And now the whole hog is actually going to come out. They will use it, looking to force them back, but they're going to now take advantage of that. Out of position, it's turning it back with Dogfighter taking out the Supercharger and the Orisa as well. Double kill by Bat, and that's going to be it. A quick turnaround here for Polar Ace.
That Lunacy flank didn't really work out, not getting the value, instead just going down. And with those ultimates invested, we are going to see at least Lunacy moving over to the McCree. So no more of that strong hook combination. He wants to be able to contest Eiko's Pharah, have a little bit of burst damage. but it's going to be difficult. There are so many buildings and angles that Pharah can abuse on the streets phase of King's Row here.
And, you know, with it continuing to push forward, oh, there's just the Dragon Strike coming through the wall. The displacement might help them for it with the Halt trying to get the damage. Now going to have the sound barrier in the back, keeping it alive. A double kill, triple kill. No, one of them being the D-Mech, but there's the follow-up with the concussion mine. And Wild Wing Bat cleaning up here. I just think Feeders are becoming now, I think, too aggressive after they already gained that first initial point.
I think this spam composition that they've set up of the Pharah Junkrat is just really, really effective against these slow Orisa comps. There's no Lucio to speed boost everyone to get past the spam. You just have to try and find a way to sustain through it. And you can do that until the ultimates come online. And then you can't sustain through the burst. And we see that same threat with Eiko's Barrage. That's not something they're going to be able to sustain through, but they're getting picks ahead of it here.
Oh my goodness, the Halt pulling them out just around the corner. Not going to be able to get any defensive coverage as the Halt will bring them out into the open. 2 minutes and 30 seconds with the Supercharger now being placed. No, the damage buff by the Valkyrie. That's going to be them being able to optimize this push and will continue to this next checkpoint.
When your back's against the wall, just have Tydra hit a headshot. There's your solution.
Right.
When you're getting stalled there. It works out though. Tydra gets the opening, pick there, and Tobinator and Lunacy able to get the follow-up. Now they're continuing to play aggressive. Night Raven does have the grab, and Dogfighter also with the shatter. These are two giant ultimates. This should be enough for them to stop the card again here.
Self-destruct going to be thrown way into the back, but the Earth Shatter is going to be able to land as well. For 2, though, Gummy Bear gaining the benefit out of this, as we will get the res onto Lunacy. They do still have the numbers advantage. Respawn in favor of Polar Ace, so they do have this opportunity to try and regroup here and hold them back. Now going to see the Valkyrie coming out by Fatty Ninja on the defensive side, able to get Lunacy to take out Wild Wing Bat in the back on the Pharah, as the another Dragon Strike coming through. Graviton going to be used trying to lock them down, but the Supercharger is there. Another back and forth here will be the Nano Boost coming out, and they're going to try and just continue pushing this. Sleep Dart is going to land onto the front line, shutting down the tank just for a brief moment, still in favor of Feeders. They have not lost any major members just yet, as they will continue to push. Lunacy switching onto the Tracer, trying to get some harass in the back. It's going to be now Tydra taking out Dogfighter on the front. D-Mech as well here, Bond to Gummy Bear back and forth. These teams will continue to go as they still have a lot of time left and just over 5 meters remaining. Lord Enzo now on the high ground, using that Valkyrie to continue being on this point, giving some great assistance to the supports, and that, I think, finally has worn out. They are losing numbers and need to retreat as Polar Ace finally gets the respawn advantage and holds on this payload.
Oh, Fatty Ninja stayed alive so long and was able to help their team sustain throughout that defense there. So that's what you love to see from the side of Polar Ace. And again, they've got this barrage available. Wild Wingbat now on the Pharah, and Eiko onto the Hanzo. So they've got a good opportunity. They decide they don't even need the barrage. They want to swap over to the Brigitte. They want to play more aggressively and stall on this payload. This could be risky against a double sniper composition. As I say that, though, Eiko doesn't care that he's against 2 snipers.
And they're going to force the res out. Another Graviton going to come out, locking them down from the last fight, generating that so rapidly here by Night Raven. And they're going to force him again away from this cart. Not going to be able to do anything about it and just look to reset here with an entire team kill.
And the pressure's on here with 2.5 minutes in the time bank for the side of Polar Ace. You really want to complete not in overtime, right? But with so much pressure here from the high ground control, it's going to be difficult to cleanly get this cap in less than a minute. That's a really big ask, particularly Riza holding onto the sound barrier. The longer you can hold this, the better.
And Lunacy unfortunately going to go down. Eiko getting the kill. Dragon Strike coming through, but the sound barrier will prevent the incoming damage. Fatty Ninja almost being picked off, but will survive. Eiko now getting the triple kill onto the Hanzo, completely shutting them back, trying to demonstrate their ability as well on the Hanzo, and manages to shut them away with 45 seconds. But they did still manage to keep 2 ults on both sides, so we are still going to see some fireworks here with this last push.
The Valkyrie is going to be so crucial from Fatty Ninja. I want to see Tydra try and find an angle to get the pick early, because if Fatty Ninja gets the full value out of Valkyrie, it's just so strong at keeping these tanks alive. The Nano is just not comparable.
Taubinator now on the front with the Orisa, still looking to try and get some damage around the corner. Lunacy up top as well. Here comes the Graviton, though, once again with the strike coming through, able to get rid of one tank as the nano boost now is going to come out overhead. Self-destruct will be thrown. Nobody going to be claimed. Polar Ace looking to push them back as we do get a res onto Talbinator, trying to keep these numbers high as we are going to trickle into overtime as both teams continue to fight. Dogfighter will go down. Tydra getting a triple kill now on the payload, looking to keep this going as we will see them go back and forth. Will be also Gummy Bear switching on to the Wrecking Ball. We are going to see it on this map. Still continuing to push. Another Dragon Strike coming through into the back line, looking to harass them, and they need to get these supports out of the back line. Still going to keep Fatty Ninja alive in the back, supporting Bat on the Pharah. They have to isolate these supports and take them down. Aiko now going to go on to the Doomfist, able to claim Gummy, along with Wild Wing Bat going down, but the Sound Barrier coming out along with the Graviton once again. Lightning fast respawns on that as overtime will finally end with Polar Ace claiming victory on King's Row.
That's a 3-1 victory from Polar Ace, an insane hold there at the end. Night Raven looking so good on the Zarya, and we see him get the play of the game to match. I definitely think he earned it. That's my pick for MVP as we see a grab coming out. How many grabs did he get this map?
4.
5, 6? It was insane.
4 of them, at least just at the end. Just at the end alone, there was 4 Graviton ults generated there, and it was unbelievable.
He finds a flank to get a high value grab to open the fight and says, I'm just going to keep my high charge. I'm going to stay alive and build up another grab before this fight is even over. 2 times in a row. That's what you love to see. I had nothing but positive things to say about Night Raven's Diva earlier in the series and showing up, popping off when it's needed on the Zarya as well. Excellent performance.
And, you know, for MVP on Polar Ace, of course, we do agree with that onto Night Raven. But I have to say, for feeders, Tydra, still just consistent play, not only on the Junkrat, but on the Hanzo as well. We saw multiple encounters of just Junkrat play, the Riptire we saw on Temple of Anubis, the triple kill early on the push for King's Row. So, you know, I gotta say, for feeders as well, that MVP was right there at the end, trying to excel and push their team through the waters that they had to try and trudge through. And again, just a stellar job by both teams here.
Absolutely. That was an insane match. Feeders able to kind of punch above their weight, taking the first map very cleanly and contesting the following maps pretty well also. I really do agree with you that pick on Tydra. And I also want to highlight the Pharah we saw on Lijiang. Just has a great hero pool, very deep. Obviously, I want to shout out Lord Enzo as well, playing a great Mercy when able to kind of not get picked off or jumped on, particularly from the Widowmaker that we saw across the side for Polar Ace.
Agreed. And even towards the end of it, you know, as we were saying, when they stalled out even longer on Polar Ace, the survivability from that Mercy player was amazing. I mean, I can't believe how long that they were able to hold that. I mean, even you commented on it. I mean, that was a full multiple fights to just survive through.
Yeah, Fatty Ninja just had so much healing. You thought Valkyrie was always active. A lot of credit does go over to Riza. Riza was good at playing the off healer and putting a lot of focus on Fatty Ninja, but then also knowing when, hey, Fatty Ninja is going to be able to make some smart plays, stay alive. I'm going to put my focus elsewhere for the rest of the fight as well. So I think a lot of good communication and a lot of trust is what we saw from the back line of Polar Ace. They were able to bend under pressure, but not break, support each other enough, but not kind of play scared or play defensively. They were able to support the aggressive tank play that we saw coming out from their front line.
And, you know, to piggyback off of the communication, at least in the back line of it, I mean, they really had both front and back line communication. It was so well done, especially towards the end of King's Row. And we saw them buy a lot of time here for Aiko on that last switch going on to the Widowmaker. You saw the space that was given by the front tanks coordinating between the two of them, allowing the support to gain that movement speed for the last engage. And I mean, all around, the communication is definitely there for Polar Ace, especially when it comes into those crunch times. They're able to really pick and choose the priority moves that need to occur to facilitate a victory on these maps.
Exactly, and Dogfighter, I think, deserves some credit, particularly on King's Row when we saw these Ryan Zarya matchups, knowing that when Night Raven is able to maintain that high charge, stay alive on the Zarya, that can be a huge difference maker, and was willing to just kind of be the one to contest the point, be the sacrificial lamb to stall on that goal line so that Night Raven could position where he needed to be putting out tons of damage to build up those rapid gravitons. So I do think it comes down to knowing your role and saying, hey, I can give up a little bit of glory for myself. I can play a little more passively because it's going to enable my teammates to pop off and close this map out.
Definitely, highly agree. And it was an interesting matchup. Again, maybe you just saw a lot of favor on control maps coming out by feeders. They're a lot more comfortable on it. You saw them still play confidently, I feel, in the overall aspect of their gameplay. But, when it came to the control map on Lijiang Tower, you saw I almost feel like it was a different type of gameplay. So I have to say that's one of those things that we would look to do. But, even further, before we jump into something like that, let's just switch it back to the analysts so we can allow them to get some, overview of what we just saw here for Polar Ace to claim victory here on Kings Row.
Yeah, we absolutely saw Polar Ace be pushed to their limits on some of these maps, and they had a clinical bend, don't break strategy. They rotated well, and I feel like ultimately feeders with benefits was beaten on the inches of the game. And I'm going to pass it over to Frito here first to talk about what some of those inches were that they lost out on. Frito.
Well, I'd say, especially going into like that last fight that we just saw on Kings Row, you saw feeders with benefits looking like they potentially could finish the map with a better time, but just some poor ultimate usage, not really setting up. I mean, in general, we could talk about the Orisa on attack as an idea anyway, which is kind of questionable to begin with, but just not really having the gas in the tank to make the big plays. The same thing I think you could say happened on their defensive third, where they had Lunacy, I believe, was on the far at that time with the barrage in his pocket, and they just sort of let the engagement come to them without looking to make any aggressive play. And before you know it, Aiko's popping off with the pick. Then they got Sound Barrier and Diva Bomb launching at you, and it just guarantees so much space. And in both of these cases on either side, they're not really able to find that key win condition in order to do something aggressive that turns the tide. So beyond looking stable throughout a lot of these maps, it came down to situations like that.
I definitely agree, and I feel like, especially with the Orisa play, there were times on the offense for feeders where it almost accidentally worked. I mean, where the Widowmaker fell off the high ground, which was partially because of the Orisa pool, and then just the way that all happened seemed a little fortuitous. And then going into the second point where Tydra was able to hit some shots, especially on the Lucio, that opened up the fight, that you just felt like, Polar Ace was just kind of a little out of position. But going over to Polar Ace and Lofty, I'll throw this one to you, is I feel like they had a great balance between their two DPS popping off at the right moments in comparison to feeders. What was the DPS battle in your eyes? Like, what was the difference between the two teams?
Well, I mean, props to the DPS duo on the side of onto the side of a I've lost my words. Which
Polar Ace.
Polar Ace. Sorry,
Yep.
For some reason I kind of got a mind blank there. But props on the DPS duo for Polar Ace for showing off their flexibility, especially on Night Raven. If we were to get into the MVP sort of segment of this match, I would definitely have to give it over to him for showing immense competence on every hero that he played, whether it was on a Widow or whether it was on a Diva. He's just playing his role very well and allowing all that space to be opened up. And they were doing a good job on shutting down Lunacy, actually, who, through multiple hero swaps, was just not able to get the value that he probably wanted off of whatever hero he was playing, wasn't able to sort of find that space to contribute his output to the team. And that kind of gave feeders a bit of a hard time pushing through, especially in those tighter corridors where everything is very, very directional in Lunacy. The focus was primarily on him, and there was not a lot of room to kind of wiggle their way out of it. So props to the DPS duo on the side of Polar Ace for being able to shut that down.
Yeah, it was definitely Lunacy did have a rough day. Frito, you were pointing that out quite a bit, where there would be moments where it looked like it was almost going to work with the way that they were trying to play with Lunacy swaps, but I mean, Aiko was just such a dominant force through the entire series. But I want to know a little more about just the rotational swaps. We saw feeders get caught by a speed boosting goats over the gap on the first point high ground, and you were about the way they should have rotated to give themselves an easier win condition. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Right. I think rotations in general are something that they were getting caught out on. This is a great example where they saw the goats comp take its sweet time, really, even like a minute, maybe even just counting where the enemies are set up. Then they rallied their way up to the top right in order to set up to make the cute little jump with speed boost. And Feeders had all the time in the world to see this coming, yet despite his great contribution throughout the entire series, I'd say, Tydra was a little bit too close to his tanks and let the hammer swing and hit him, despite getting a lot of nade damage and everything. The comp in general wasn't really ready in order to rotate back. So ideally what you want to do, see that freight train getting ready to come right down the lane towards you and use that coveted S key at the right moment in order to parry back. Because you don't have the Lucio. They're playing with Mercy Zen, so they're a bit slower. And ideally, you get them down that hallway chasing you with Junkrat nades and you're alive throughout that fight. That could be an entirely different situation. So situations like that where they seemingly didn't realize what the rotation should have been and getting kind of punched in the face by it is why some of those engagements were more lopsided than they should have been. I think I can recall ones on Anubis as well, where it felt like against the Goats comp, which they run themselves, by the way, you'd think they'd have a bit more experience with it, but the Goats was able to rush to point and there wasn't the proper rotations to get your Zenyatta or DPSs in the right place in order to crossfire down into it to have an impact. So it's something that we've seen Feeders fall victim to a few times in this series, unfortunately.
Very, very, very true. So, Lofty, when it comes to Polar Ace, what is the thing that they need to keep moving forward?
They need to make sure that they keep up on that adaptability. Like we mentioned before in the game before, the way that Feeders is going to be able to break this unstoppable giant seemingly is to make sure that they keep them off of their game, kind of throw them off with kind of odd compositions, odd compositional choices, odd rotations. And we saw a bit of that on King's Row where Orisa on the offense, like we said, still may be viable, but not necessarily a very, very common pick. And so the Polar Aces are having a hard time kind of adapting to that, giving them a lot of space on first point, almost an immediate take, and then maybe one or two fights good on the defense, but just weren't able to kind of grab that space back that they needed. They did make the adaptations on third point by being able to make use of that space, make use of the angles, and sort of keep that Orisa shield in place in terms of damage. But they need to be able to adapt way faster in the future if they're going to be facing teams who will be throwing curveballs like that again.
Very true. So normally this is the point where I would ask who he was, but I have to say, I think it's pretty clearly Aiko. Now, obviously I'll open the to disagree, but I feel like he just came up clutch. Is there any disagreements on the MVP for this match?
I think a really good runner-up would be Night Raven, who also, as I mentioned earlier, swapped in as the Widow in order to make space for Aiko to play Sombra on Anubis on the defense. Did a comparable job there, was very clutch, installing the objective on Gibraltar while Aiko was clicking heads and all of that, and really good Zarya charge and ultimate usage on King's Row. So triple header, decent argument for Night Raven as well, but I think Aiko really took the series over on Gibraltar, just easily winning the Widow duel and making those big plays to take over the game to stifle any comeback that Feeders could have potentially brought up, especially on the Hanzo at the last point there of King's Row.
I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm going to be saying that the MVP is going to be Night Raven for this particular match. Aiko was doing a fantastic job popping off and swinging back the momentum in Game 2 for the side of Polar Aces, but it was really Night Raven showing off again his flexibility and his proficiency in all the roles that he picked, and again, being that team player, allowing Aiko to go onto the Sombra and giving that trust where he can be, okay, you can go ahead and play Sombra, I can take care of this Widowmaker, no problem, you can trust me, and I think that's a huge sort of plus for me.
It was definitely a dynamic duo. However, that does wrap up our coverage of this game for Broadcast.gg and the Open Division, and we hope to see you all next week. And if you're looking to join a community that cares about esports and Overwatch, make sure to find the Discord, join the conversation, join the community, and be part of the family. Anyway, this has been the Open Division. I've been Green Havoc. These were our analysts. This is the show, and we'll see you on the ladder.